All right, we're going to get a little bit less conventional here by looking at NFL Street, a game for the Xbox, a 7-on-7 sort of flag football inspired creation, probably meant to compete with the NFL Blitz series, although I'm not really familiar much with the NFL Blitz series, but it's more arcadey kind of football. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into a pickup game, and we're going to let the computer pick first. Now, my experience in this game is that you want to pick defensive backs and defensive linemen first, unless you get a really crap quarterback grouping. So here you see we get a fairly good amount of defensive backs, but we're going to go ahead and grab Chris McAllister, who might be the best cornerback in the game, based just purely on ratings. And then we're going to grab Rodney Harrison as our safety. And then we're going to go and get some support on the D-line. And the reason I like D-linemen is because of their ability to pass rush on defense, whereas offensive linemen can block better, but I just prefer their I prefer the ability to attack on the defensive side of things. And then you'll notice we need 3 more players, and here's Antwaan Randle El, who has the best passing stat of any non-quarterback in the game. And in this game, it is possible to play. You can play with any 7 players you want to throw out there. So we're going to demonstrate the fact that you don't really need a quarterback, even though Daunte Culpepper is not bad. And we're going to go grab Antwaan Randle El to be our passer. We do need a running back, so we're going to reach back into the past and grab Charlie Garner to be our running back. And so now we just need to make that last pick for Randle El, and we have as a result, we have an extremely fast but not very large roster. So I'm actually going to deploy Randle El as the linebacker here so that he can go into coverage. And then I'll use Charlie Garner as the third pass rusher. And we're going to go into the most basic field for this, since it's been a while since I've played this game. The EA field. And usually you get a couple of trash talking scenes before the game. You can see that first to 36 wins. And here's the playbook. So you've got 7 guys. You can arrange them different ways. But, you've got pass plays, run plays. So here we've got Javon Walker beating the coverage a little bit. So we're going to hit him right there, and then he's going to get thrown to the ground. And if you'll notice, both teams' meters went up. That's the game breaker meter. If you fill that up by doing stunts like that, and by scoring and doing things like that, eventually your game breaker meter will fill up, and you'll be able to score a touchdown. For whatever reason, the computer always seems a little bit more adept at manipulating the game breaker meter than you are. So just be aware of that. Alright, so we're going to call this play here. This is my favorite 2-point conversion play, except that I forgot to throw it. And so I only got 1 point on the conversion. It could be that I confused this game's rules with conversions with the rules for NFL Street 2, which when we get there, those rules might be a little bit different. NFL Street 1 and NFL Street 2 came out relatively close together, like within, 6-8 months. So they really did make a lot of things better for NFL Street 2 over this game. But there are some neat things they did with the rosters and such here. And their players are different. If you're playing the Carolina Panthers, Julius Peppers is an option at running back based on his run power stats. I mean, the team already has Stephen Davis, so I mean, it's not necessarily that you would want to do that, but you certainly could. I'm also not sure why Brett Favre is allowed to beat me up here, but our defense, as you can see, is showing some holes. And we're now pushed into defending the goal line. And if you notice, our game breaker bar has been surpassed by the other teams. Considering it's always easier for the computer to fill up the game breaker bar than for you to fill up the game breaker bar, you want to be concerned about that, even though you're ahead. A game breaker on offense pretty much will allow you to run invincibly to the end zone. A game breaker on defense, which is probably where you're going to use it, can be used to create a turnover, either an interception or a fumble, at which point the game breaker ends. A game breaker can also be used to cancel out an opponent's game breaker. In fact, that's in a game against the computer, that's usually how I end up using my game breaker. Although in this case, we're getting outpaced early, so I don't think we're going to have that option. We also just gave up a touchdown. Now, ordinarily what I do on defense is, I run a man defense, with one man back in the zone, so that I rely on good cover people. There we go. Let Charlie Garner run a little bit. And I use the weakest player on the field, who's usually the quarterback, as the third rush lineman. And sometimes, using the turbo and using the right buttons, you can actually get some effective results from that. On offense, the playbook's not very large, not very complex, and I only really run a few plays. But here's an option play, which, again, because we have Antwaan Randle El as our quarterback, makes more sense, because we have more speed on the field, but we don't have a great throwing. Yeah, we're going to go into the same play that I used last time we scored. This time I'm going to throw it, and this time Chris McAllister is going to drop it. So thanks, Chris. Thanks for being the best rated cornerback in the game. One problem with NFL Street that was sort of fixed by its successor, enemy running backs are notoriously hard to bring down, particularly in the story mode, particularly later on in the story mode. Like, if Eddie George gets the ball, good night. It really isn't very fair. I mean, this is Kevin Mack right here, a guy who wasn't in the league for that long, wasn't that good, and he's just running all over us. I guess part of it could be that I'm trying to tackle him with Antwaan Randle El, who's not exactly got a great tackle rating. Alright, so they're driving back down the field, and you can see their game breaker meter is getting very close. And the computer is relatively intelligent about using its game breaker. What it will do is it will use its game breaker on the defensive possession after it gets it. And you'll notice my game breaker bar is not in a position to where I could cancel out their game breaker, which they just achieved on this down. Alright, fortunately, we get a fumble there, and that means they're going to activate their game breaker here. And what I like to do when the other team has a game breaker is basically punt. and that is throw a deep ball and then let them intercept it so that they're nowhere near the end zone when the turnover happens. Of course, in this case, we didn't catch it. Okay, in that case, we didn't catch it either. Alternatively, I guess I could have run Antwaan Randle El up the left-hand side of the field there, but that, again, I was just sort of anticipating the turnover like that. Okay, so at least they're at midfield, so we haven't necessarily given them anything in the way that we could have. I mean, there could have been 7 points right there. And then McAllister intercepts this ball, and then I'm waiting for the turbo to recharge and not necessarily remembering to do any kind of crazy skill moves. So I guess McAllister made up for the fact that he didn't catch those balls earlier. We're going to go 2-point conversion again, and McAllister's going to get hung up on the hedge and not complete the route there. So, Chris McAllister giveth, and Chris McAllister taketh away. So now we're going to go into Game Breaker on defense, and again, the idea here is to create a fumble or an interception. More likely a fumble. Although if we just end up holding them on downs, we'll end up with the ball, I think, about right here, so that wouldn't be a big deal. The downs in this game work like they do in flag football. You have certain zones to deal with. And once you enter a new zone, you've got 4 downs to leave. And then obviously the end zone becomes the final zone you need to get to. All right, another option play here out to the left to move the ball. And then Chris McAllister decides not to catch it again because he's being engaged by those other guys. And we're just going to let Garner run away from guys. And at this point, we're up 25-7. So there's no way for us to shorten the game here. So I'm just going to keep going for 2. We're going to have to score 2 more touchdowns to end this thing. So, yeah. Be careful with your math. You can, to get to 36, you would think would theoretically take 6 scores, assuming you got no extra points. And, you need 1 2-point conversion if you want to kind of cut that down to only having to score 5 times. But we're going to have to go for the full 6 here. And I don't know why Brett Favre is so much, or is so truck here. Statistically, you shouldn't be that effective. But, there are a lot worse quarterbacks you can pick in this game. It just depends on who they randomly select in the player selector. That was a pretty good. What we got was a pretty good selection because, in theory, I would have Culpepper. Although I decided to go no quarterback just to show you that going no quarterback is possible. Okay, we run out of turbo, otherwise Randle El would have been gone. Now we're going to go, they're going to let me have the first down, I'm just going to take it. And I'm going to run to the other side and look for McAllister. There he is. And he has to fight a little bit, but he gets into the end zone. And now we're going to throw it at McAllister again for 2. And now that we don't need it anymore, he brings it in. The game will end when one team reaches 36. It will not do the extra point or whatever. So don't worry about that. So now we're having to, fight the late game offense. And the AI typically gets stronger as the game goes on. The defense reacts quicker to what you do. The offense is harder to bring down. I don't know if this is programmed or not. I assume I'm not making this up. We break up a pass there. Okay, tries to shut down the option here, but Kevin Mack makes a couple moves and puts the ball on the 1 yard line. Now we got a problem. They're pretty close to getting another game breaker, which could make the game a whole lot closer if they were to succeed. So what we have to do is we have to hold them out of. They can score, but we have to hold them out of the gaining a new game breaker bar. Okay, so see, that didn't get it for them, and there's no way that they can have a 1 or 2 point conversion that would get all those points without them doing something ridiculous. And doing something ridiculous really doesn't happen all that much in this game. I mean, in theory, you could have a lot of... the game wants you to use the pitch button like that. And so you'll see guys come up kind of behind you to receive a pitch on a play. But you may not notice them because you're too busy trying to get downfield. And sometimes the guys who are behind you for the pitch are guys you wouldn't necessarily want carrying the ball. There's a power move for the running back, and Garner gets us a little further down the field. So now I'm going to see what they do with Javon Walker here. They decide to let him get open between the corner and the safety, so I'll take it. And then we'll run the crash running play and end the game. And so our little pick team defeats the other team 39-21. Not a lot of excitement, not a lot of game breakers. But, that's what you have to sort of weigh in this series.